Hello and welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism, a podcast about urbanism and stuff. My name is Nick Laporte and I am joined by one of my co-hosts, Ethan Myers. Say hello, Ethan.
Hello, folks. How are we doing today?
Hopefully pretty good, but you might notice already that the normal person to intro this podcast isn't here, and that's Alex, and that's because he's probably in Montreal with a coma of poutine and smoked meat. I imagine something like that. He didn't tell us the details, but that's just what I assume. So we actually have a replacement for him. We found him yesterday, and his name is Ben Durham.
Just lost on the street, found.
Yeah.
Exactly, folks.
He's right there.
So Ben is another content creator on YouTube. So Ben, can you just give us an intro, like a 30-second elevator pitch about what you do on YouTube?
It all started back in the old day. No, I make. You said 30-minute pitch, right?
We said 3 hour.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. So it all started back when. No, I make content that really just, along with reviews and things for products for bikes. It's a lot of urbanism, and it's a lot of. I live in London, Ontario, so I've kind of piggybacked on Jason Slaughter's hate for fake London. And I'm like, hey, I live here and I've been biking for a long, long time here. And my fiance bikes and all of this. So I'm like, hey, just with the channel, biking's possible in cities. I realize there's AAA stuff and all of the stuff for non-mammal cyclists, but like it's possible. And I see a future in London and North America, weirdly enough, where people can bike.
As much as the doomerism is abound, yeah.
Hey, Ben, can you clarify the acronym MAMMAL? I know it, but I don't know if our audience knows what MAMMAL means.
Fair. So, wait, what is it? Mammal?
MAMIL.
Yep. Shoot, it's like, okay.
Man
oh, no, I
don't even know.
It stands for
middle-aged man.
In Lycra.
Yep. There we go. Yeah. I was like the middle age, the MA. I was like stumped on. So
yeah, totally. That's definitely something you need to clarify. A lot of times they'll say, there's a podcast about biking or cycling, and they think it would be about the mammal stuff. But no, I'm like, it's about infrastructure and having safe spaces for people on bikes. So I think maybe I need to clarify that more often. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it, especially on short notice. It's really cool to have you here. I'm a big fan of watching your videos, especially about London, but especially I wish you'd post more videos about you cycling first person, having close calls, because those things just get me riled up, and they really just, I know they can hit the algorithm too. So.
I have to say, so the shorts are great because what I've been stumped on since, like, my channel wasn't always cycling. I just post whatever, but now it's become more cycling, and the shorts, because you don't have to think of the thumbnails, and it is just like, hey, this thing happened in front of me. You film with your phone. I've seen a few of yours, Nick's, and it's like, yeah, that's great content, and it just is what's happening, and it's very authentic. So
yeah.
Awesome. Well, I've got a few questions for you coming up in a bit. What I want to go over a few things. First off, we'd have to say happy birthday to Alex, who's not here. Even though he's
belated birthday,
he's ditched us, but happy birthday to Alex. And also I want to just mention where our listeners are from. So I was looking into the data from our podcast downloads, and this is wild. I was like, oh, it's probably, mostly just people from USA and Canada. And it is, but we've spread quite far and wide. Check this out. So USA, Canada, Australia, the UK, Germany, Iceland, Belgium, Ukraine, Ireland, Finland, Italy, Puerto Rico, Spain, Japan, Taiwan, the Netherlands, Isle of Man, New Zealand, Poland, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, and Turkey. Like, that blew me away. Like, some of those, I was like, are you serious? Like,
yeah, that's crazy.
Somebody in Turkey's listening to us. Thank you so much for listening to us. Really appreciate it. And send us more questions. We've got a bunch of questions we're going to talk about later today.
Questions are like half the show, folks.
It is.
If you want to get involved with Radio Free Urbanism, feel free to throw them out to us.
Yeah, and the shorter the better. We've had a few just thesis sent to us recently. They're quite long, but we're still working on it.
A couple, 1 or 2, like 3-sentence questions, always wonderful. We can have a little lightning round one of these episodes, and we can just fly through like 10 or 15 of your questions. So, that's always great too.
And as we mentioned last week, the Patreon is live, and we don't have any actual benefits other than one that is is actually there already, and that's early access. As soon as this podcast is done and it's edited and it's out, that's the first place I post it, and it's going to be live as soon as we're done, basically about an hour after we're done recording. So if you want that, go check us out. Patreon, Radio Free Urbanism. So back to what we were talking about. We were talking about here, and I wrote down 3 questions. Whether you read them or not, I don't know, but I'm going to ask them anyway. So the first one I want to ask you, again, back to you're saying about your YouTube channel, you just kind of posted to anything as the years went on, but more recently in the past, 3 or 4 years, you posted a lot more stuff about cycling. So what was the tipping point for you to funnel that passion for micromobility into your videos?
It's interesting because, all of urbanism stuff on YouTube is exploding at this point. But yeah, Jason and his videos over at Not Just Bikes, they just they take the blinders off of you. But I think my history is a little bit interesting when it comes to that, because I knew something was up with cities, because I've moved around the country. I've been in Alberta, over near Edmonton, in Whitecourt, a town of 10,000 people. And yes, suddenly it's like, whoa, what are you talking about? Like a small town, we're talking urbanism. It's like, no. This town of 10,000 people was traffic logged. And it was like, how is this even happening? And so way back then, I didn't know what urbanism was. I didn't know that cycling I don't know. I knew it was a transportation option, because here I am, I'm in traffic, and there's this, I only had to drive for, I think it was 7 minutes, and it was downhill on the way to work. And I'm there, I'm looking, and I'm sitting in traffic, 2014, staring at the sidewalk, Next day, I went on Kijiji at the time, got a bike for $100, just a CCM Canadian Tire mountain bike, and I just got on it, and I pumped up the tires, bought a pump off of Marketplace too, or whatever, and I blew past all that traffic. I showed up at work, and my colleagues were like, "What are you doing?" And it's an oil town, so it's like, "What are you doing? Get in your truck." It's like, "Nah, I just biked to work." And so I just hucked the bike inside the office. Didn't lock it or anything. It's a small town. I would know who got it. So, Bob, you give me my bike back right now. But no, it was just interesting because I beat my time in traffic. And then on the way back, I got a good workout because it was downhill on the way to work, which is perfect. And then on the way back, I got a workout, and that's that. And then I ended up moving back to London. And for college, I was finishing off college. And I would bike over to, actually, we'll get hyper local here. And Nick, you'll know this, but Masonville. So I grew up, from what Jason posts, I think I grew up in the same neighborhood as him, as Not Just Bikes. So Northwest London is a desert when it comes to urbanist stuff.
Yep.
And he uses a lot of that. I'm over in East London now. Wondering if I should dox myself. No.
I mean, based on the videos I've seen of you, I'm pretty sure I know where you live, or at least
exactly.
close to it. Yeah.
It's funny because I keep it around. I'm like, okay, within 500 meters, a kilometer or so. I'm like, whatevs. People get
Nick, can you believe that we are not even 10 minutes into our first show with the guest, and we are already getting them to dox themselves?
Whoops.
I don't know if that's a good thing or bad. I'm not sure. Probably not.
We'll
good.
see. If you want to become a guest on Radio Free Urbanism, all you have to do within the first 10 minutes is give us your name, social security number, and address.
I was about to say, so my social insurance number is...
Yeah.
No, but so it's a little bit different over here on this side of the city because we take Cheapside. I think you've probably seen this if you watch my videos, but we take Cheapside over to Colburn, pretty much. It's our bike highway, we call it. And yes, it's just a painted bike gutter, but also at some point it just jumps you into the road. So that sucks. But they are changing that to more painted bike lanes. So yay for more gutters, but it's in this case it seems a little bit better than what it was. And okay. So yeah, brings us all the way downtown. It's great.
Yeah, because Colburn actually has some separated like cycle track, or at least somewhat protected, right?
Yeah, it is.
I was there in the
my
summer. And I
favorite
think that's
road.
where I filmed. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, which is great to see. It's incredible. So on that point, I want to ask you the next question. So again, back to your videos. You've posted many different videos about advocacy. I remember watching one a while ago. It was, I think, at the London Brewing Co-op, where it was some advocacy group was talking about how we can reshape the city, and it's actually possible. And it was very uplifting. But this is also including you and your dad speaking at City Hall, talking about urbanism and having a better space to live in. So my question is, and this is coming from a place of, still having lots of friends and family who live in the area, and how, I don't want to be too provocative, but car brained they are about this stuff. And I think as a whole, London and other cities like it very much suffer from that. So what keeps you striving towards this goal in the face of all that car brained opposition?
Well, let me tell you. We're so close. It's weird. Like this is the answer is we're really close because all we need is a grid. Like we have partial bits here, and it's funny because there's not even that many partial bits, but the city's not large. A lot of cities in North America just need a few connected grid pieces that are protected, and you're like 80% of the way there because the side roads are side roads and they are streets, and so they are fairly safe. It's those roads that connect a city. There's not that many kilometers to connect. So that keeps me really optimistic. And the fact that every day I actually do see urban, the infilling and density happening. Like I'm like, oh, there's a mid-rise, and oh, there's another mid-rise, and they're taking over on Fanshawe Park Road. So I make not even a commute, but my parents are over near Masonville still, so I travel between around the Huron Heights area and Masonville, and I take several different ways, but sometimes it's the main road, and I see this infill happening. I'm like, hey, it is happening. It needs to happen on a much larger scale, but it is happening. And then the bike lanes going in, I'm like, okay, that's happening. I see these small little things happening, and it gives me hope. And my final little rant bit here is the Netherlands, that was like 50 years ago that they started. It has to start at some point. It can't just happen. Okay, it can, because Paris is a thing. It can just happen totally. Overnight. But in most cities, it won't. I know that's very dangerous too, because then people won't see it's like, well, we have these bike lanes that no one are using. It's like, yeah, because they're not connected just yet. So I get why they're doing it this way. I am still optimistic. I don't know if that's hopeless. There we go. That's my answer.
Cool. No, I like it because that's the thing.
One.
I get asked the same thing, and we see it a lot on Twitter and stuff, even from people who are urbanists who might live in other countries and say that you should just give up and move. Like, no, I want to make this place better. And I always come back to the old quotes, like a community grows when old men plant trees whose shade they'll never benefit from. And I think that's right, is the right thing to do. At least it feels right. We'll see what actually happens.
It's the altruistic mindset of, wanting to benefit more than just yourself.
Yeah, and I think we're moving in that direction. We can see it all across North America, which is it's fucking incredible. It's really great to see. Some places more than others, and I think we'll talk about that later in the show with an email. But were you going to say something, Ethan?
I was going to say, if Tampa, Florida can get protected bike lanes in its downtown, your city can too.
Yeah, totally. All right, one last question I've got here for Ben is, if you had a magic wand, what is the one thing you would change about London, Ontario?
Let him cook.
One thing? It's a magic wand, so do you snap it after? Or?
That's how much power it's got in it. As soon as you wave it, it's just depleted. It's done.
All right. I have
takes a lot of energy to fix London.
Yes. All that sprawl. Oh, shoot. That's tough. It's one of two things. I'll go with the first. I will totally just quickly say the second, because it's kind of like a 1-2 thing. That connected grid, I think, like a fully protected, connected grid with not only protected, but lovely to cycle on, because there's some roads. Okay, a lot of roads, they put the boulevards or the the transit stops and it's up, down. It's like, what? The road doesn't have what? Like the raised intersections would help. I actually spoke to the active transportation manager in like London, which is another reason I'm hopeful. Actually, is that is a position in the city now. So he's been doing a lot of good work. So good job with on Dan. Great job, Dan. But yeah, just like a lovely experience and a connected experience that is protected. So that's that. The second would be transit that's first class. Really, like, it's the LTC is what people call the poor wagon. And it's like, stop. It's actually awesome. Like, I took that throughout college and it was lovely. I got like Bose headphones for sound canceling, and I just would wake up in the morning. I'd bike down to Masonville in this case, lock my bike up with a cable lock. I don't know how it didn't get stolen. It was not a great bike, but like for years it would just chill there at like the bay. And I'd go over to the stop and just sit on the bus, and it was nice. And yeah, it could be so much better. We'll just leave it at that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely an experience I had. I went to college. I went to Fanshawe College, and I had many memories of missing a connection at Wonderland in Oxford, just like trying to sprint on to get to the 17 because the timings were just so off, and you'd have to wait like another 15 to 30 minutes for the next bus. Just like, oh my God. But other than that, yeah, they're buses and they're pretty good. And I'm really excited for the rapid transit that they're putting in. It's just too bad that's not covering, the entire cross of the city that they originally had planned. But if it's a success, we'll see where it goes. But back to your first point about having a complete grid, that's something that even here in Vancouver, as they say, one of the best cycling cities in North America, is totally lacking. It's like, even here, it doesn't exist. It's so broken. And my biggest gripe, and the thing that I think any city should implement first and foremost, is actual bike streets. Actual bike streets. Like here in Vancouver, we have bike routes, which is a designated route. It's a street. Sometimes they'll have modal filtering. Sometimes they'll have speed bumps. But generally, it's sharrows and then signs along the road that say slow street. They'll have bicycle signs. And that's really it. So drivers just treat it like any other street, because why wouldn't they? It seems like any other street for the most part. So you end up with high-speed traffic on streets that should be accommodating to people who are 8 to 80 years old, right? Actual AAA infrastructure. And that's the one thing I would really like to see here in Vancouver and, of course, everywhere, I think, because it's something that can be implemented easily, cheaply. And once it's there, it just becomes an actual haven for people who want to cycle, a safe and good place to be. And like every day I cycle, I have a bad experience, at least one with some driver on one of these bike routes. And it's disheartening, but we'll get there. I'm also, optimistic we'll get there. But yeah, Ethan, do you have any questions for Ben?
No, I'm very much we'll see as we go, along when it comes to questions with people.
Yeah, and
I've always been kind of that way.
And because Ben isn't a transit YouTuber, Ethan's a bit
yeah,
prof.
I know. You
He's
keep bringing on all these bike people, and
he's Canadian too. He's like,
exactly.
When are we going to get another American on the podcast?
It's like we need an American who likes trains. No, I'm just kidding.
All right. Well, on that note, let's move into our first story here. I'm going to take this one. This is coming from Vancouver, naturally. And this is something I mentioned last week after Alex was talking about, I think it's Stephen Ave. Is that what it is in Calgary?
Yeah.
Car-free street?
Yeah.
That he talked about last week. And I mentioned about some car-free pilots happening in Vancouver. And this one is coming this summer to Gastown. So Gastown is on the east end of downtown, and it's a very popular tourist destination. And even just for people going out for nightlife, there's bars, there's pubs, there's different cool shopping stores and art galleries and stuff like that. But it's
the tourist neighborhood, isn't it?
Totally,
it's like the tourist neighborhood of Vancouver.
Cobbled streets. It has a steam clock that a lot of people like to watch. It goes off with, making the whistling noise. And
I can just see your disdain for it. You're like, oh my God.
I like it. I love that thing, man. I really like it. I do. I've only been here for like 6 or 7 years, so I'm still the tiny bit of glow. I'm not like this local.
You're not
super
fully jaded.
Not yet. So yeah, what they're doing is they're actually blocking off one block. And the reason for that mostly is because there's actually a parkade on one of the blocks. So this will be from Richards to Cambie Street. That's pedestrian only. And the two interior blocks, Water Street from Cambie through to Abbott and Corral Streets, that'd be car late. So those are the ones that are east of there. So that's July and August. And after that, the staff will revisit the pilot project in the fall to figure out the next steps. So that might be other areas in the city, or whether they want to make this seasonal or keep it permanent. So for it to be one block, I think is good for multiple reasons, because it can show people what that would actually be like, an actual semi-permanent place where people can just be walking around, enjoy the neighborhood, be a pedestrian neighborhood, car free. Because we have them, like I said a few podcasts ago, on Main Street. It's like a one-day thing. Same with in Kitsilano, they do the same thing, several blocks, and it's a party. Now, I'm not expecting it to be that, but it'll definitely be a place where people can go enjoy it. There'll be seating and stuff like that, and actually feel like a community, not a throughway for traffic. And that's the second part, is that a lot of cars will take it as just a throughway, a thoroughfare, to get through onto, I don't know, is it Pacific, or I don't know the road names. And anyway, just as a throughway. So it basically makes a diverter and should traffic calm the other areas as well, which is great. It's cool to see.
Yeah, it's super exciting to see these even if they're just pilot projects, it's super exciting to see any streets get turned car free. It's nice to see that Vancouver's doing it.
Yeah, I'm super pumped about this. Obviously, businesses are split. That's what always happens when it comes to car-free stuff. A lot of businesses usually overestimate how much business actually comes from drivers. So I'm looking forward to seeing the proof in the pudding, whether or not that's actually going to be true or not, because it's not always a success. It's not like it's a foregone conclusion that these things will work out for the positive for business, but I really hope it does, because we could definitely use a lot more of these in the city. How about in London, Ben? Do you guys have any car-free areas?
So I just got back from a trip. It was 3 weeks in Thailand.
Nice.
Just getting over the jet lag. It's weird because my history back in 2017, when I went to Thailand before, that was actually kind of the crux of my e-biking. So a lot of I didn't mention this before, but a lot of my stuff is now e-biking, because I'm like, oh my, what? Like, this is the most efficient thing ever for urban sprawl. It's almost like a hack. It's like, hey, you have urban sprawl. You can't fix that in the short term. And as an individual, you can't do that. But to deal with it, it's like, oh, wait a second. There's that. But the reason I bring that up is I've never, this time we went to some night markets, but they took over like all of Chiang Mai. Not all of it. Was just 2 streets, but it seemed, as you walk through, with the literal, I don't know, it probably was tens of thousands of people, and that was a bustling place. And then we went around the corner, we chatted and stuff for 2 hours, came back, nothing. It was like everyone packed up and left. We're like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And we're like, what? So that's over in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And meanwhile, like, they have the population density and they have tourism and all of that. But I'm yet again optimistic for Dundas Street down in London, Ontario's downtown. And that's because they have done everything that's, okay, not everything. They have done a lot of what's needed to pedestrianize a downtown. And they are densifying yet again, this time with high rises because of capital costs, so that it's less mid-rise. And like, if you're going to build something, you might as well build it big. It's questionable and not the best thing, but hey, it's happening. At least it's not a bunch of single family dwellings. So yes, kind of. It's not fully blocked off.
The lovely Canadian way of building giant high rises right next to single family homes still stands.
Yeah, it's again, I'm not an expert on this, but it's like the pressure builds up and it just sprouts out of the ground. But again, it's better than just leaving a lot of it as a parking lot. I think that's what I always thought about London. And I went back this summer, like I said, and I didn't think about how many parking lots are downtown. And this is like a lot of cities in North America, but wow, there's so much parking in downtown London. It is unreal. Like, what's the street there? Is it Talbot, near Talbot and Dundas, kind of in that area, just north of the Budweiser Gardens? And there's like this giant, massive parking lot across from it's like the legislative building or whatever. And it's just like unreal how much parking. It's completely empty most of the time. Like, there's some cars in it, but.
Speaking of a city with a ton of downtown parking.
Sorry,
sorry,
talking to each other.
No, I was gonna just go for like a 5-second little spiel.
Please,
yes,
please.
Go for it. Go for it.
Everyone always says, but the bike lanes aren't being used. I'm like, have you seen the parking lots?
Yeah.
So,
Speaking of a city with a lot of empty parking lots, not me personally, but there is a wonderful little Midwestern city called Kansas City, if you're not familiar with it. It's called Kansas City, but it's in Missouri, surprisingly, because we like to fool people out here in the U.S. on where you actually are. But this city is home to a major league sports team called the Kansas City Royals, and they have been in a stadium search for a while for a new stadium. Now, recently, they've just proposed a new stadium design that actually puts a stadium in downtown. However, this is not without controversy, even amongst urbanists, because this stadium is going to basically tear up an entire city block of businesses.
Ooh.
And Kansas City is a city where I believe Parking Reform Network has calculated somewhere between 35 to 40% of the land is literally like surface lots. Like it's like 35 to 40% of the city is surface lots. I'm currently trying to just look it up now and
terrible.
Just pull up the
oh my god.
Pull up the their chart that they have. Parking Reform Network has this great chart for like every different city on how much of their downtown is spent for parking. But what the big issue here is that since they're planning to chew up a downtown block, even though it doesn't have the best land use, I think some of the land is reserved for a public storage, which is a chain of storage like buildings. But that's still in a building that could be eventually renovated into apartments. There's a strip of like 2 to 3 story like businesses that are there that are, lower level commercial, upper levels apartments. And the real big thing here is that not only is Kansas City a city that just lacks most transit in general, but tearing this up is going to affect a district called the Transit Development District, which they've been using the tax revenue from that to fund their transit. So they have a streetcar at the moment. But the thing is that if you rip up all these businesses, then you're going to take away a lot of the tax funding that keeps this transit free to ride and expanding. And the stadium's also not going to be paying any property taxes for existing. So that as well. And it's going to get a bunch of city and state funds.
That doesn't make sense. What?
No. They're going.
Sense?
It's the world of we like to give our sports teams as many tax breaks as possible to avoid having to pay taxes, because in a lot of cities view their sports teams as like these holy economic businesses that are just absolutely propping up everything. And then we just decide to subsidize the crap out of them to the point where they're not exactly providing very much economic benefit to the point where we're actually providing them the economic benefit. Cities see this as kind of this mutual thing, but in a lot of cases, they're essentially just funding sports teams to stay there. It happened as well. It happens pretty much in every city in the U.S. where a sports team will cry about their stadium being outdated and they need a new one. And then they'll threaten to leave a city, and the city eventually caves into their demands. Or if you're like Oakland, California, you lose all your sports teams. And it's a phenomenon that's been going on for the past 2 decades. I just think that the Kansas City Royals one is the most recent addition to the phenomena, and it's also got the fun, wonderful thing of not only destroying a city block, even though it's not the best land use at the moment, but also taking away from a transit development district's revenue.
Yeah, that's pretty disappointing.
Yeah, it's incredibly disappointing, at least on that end, because Kansas City is not this city that has like it's not like it has this amazing downtown land use in a lot of areas. A lot of the grid is broken up by some of the most egregious downtown highways, pretty much anywhere in North America. Like it's bad. It's bad. Like the Kansas City streetcar is nice and all, but like it needs to expand because of how bad the land use is here. Mm-hmm. I am going to just really quickly just share my screen here and just show you how bad it is.
Nailed it this time.
So here we go. Here's downtown Kansas City, where they're planning to put the stadium is, I believe it's right over here. So if you can see, they're planning to tear up this land right over here. It's not great land use.
So just south of the T-Mobile Center.
Yeah, just south of the T-Mobile Center, which also doesn't have a state or a sports team there. But if you were to look at other points in downtown Kansas City, you would see
What?
that there is some excellent land use that they can choose from for their lovely stadium.
A little bit of parking, just a little bit of parking.
Just a little bit that, they could. I mean, where else could they possibly put this stadium?
I'm wondering.
I'm not seeing any land.
They're trying to leverage the area that's already there.
I'm not seeing any land that they could possibly use.
It's very interesting because it's like the most desirable spot is right there because of the businesses.
Yeah. It's
They also want to do a freeway cap too, which is probably the one good thing, but I think that's been proposed before the stadium even was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a better location for sure for the sports team and the people who want to go there than the current location, which I think is like way out of town, basically, right? With a giant parking lot surrounding it.
Yeah, it's pretty famous for being awful.
Is it worse than the Dodgers? The Dodgers one is like, it's a beautiful parking lot. Look at it.
Here, I'll just let you. I'll just let you guys.
Be a good comparison somewhere.
I'll let you guys see.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's a big parking lot. They had some massive.
So yeah, we have some wonderful stadium land use in the U.S.
Okay. Well, at least it's between the two stadiums. They got the Chiefs there too, right?
Yeah. So I mean, you could theoretically just run transit out there, like for like game days and stuff like that, and not like have it majorly affect your system or your downtown land use. But they want a new stadium, and that's they're probably going to end up getting it.
I wonder if there's a way to integrate these in a way that you're not necessarily, you're still destroying the businesses that are already there, but how could you build a stadium in a way that it still has a remaining business, access to it? Like you could have ground level businesses along the stadium. I don't think I've ever seen that other than like, usually it's a souvenir shop or whatever, just a memorabilia shop.
I think Fenway Park has it, if I'm not mistaken. I know Wrigley Field in Chicago has it. Baseball stadiums tend to do a little bit better with this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's still pretty terrible land use when it comes to it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can still build the stadium downtown. There's no one's saying you shouldn't, because I mean, look at all the open lots that you can build over. It's just that they're choosing the one spot that actually has some development on it.
Yeah.
It kind of story/woodmug there. I always tend to blend the two.
Yeah. I think a lot of the things on here are always, what grinds my gears in some way or another. Yeah, cool. Is there anything else to say about that?
So I have an interesting one just based off of that parking lot. And yeah, a lot of like football stadiums have just the most glorious parking arrangements and no shuttles. So this is to do with shuttles in my mind because we have a friend who moved to Hamilton. She works at a college, university. I can't remember. I'm so bad with this. But it's interesting to me because she's been asking, hey guys, I think I'm ready for a bike because it would be quicker. Because you have parking. But when I see something like that screen share that you just showed us and the satellite view, and it's just swaths of parking lots, that's not uncommon for large institutions in Canada either, and I mean in North America. But you get to the point where parking has to be elsewhere because you don't want to tear down, let's say, the university, because those are fairly historic typically, and it's like, hey, the buildings are nice, it's fairly walkable, so don't bulldoze this parking lot. So it's one of those institutions that actually it is good. Problem, even if you have a 15-minute drive, so you drive to the university, in her case 15 minutes, then she has to take a shuttle from the parking lot to her side of the university, which takes, like, the shuttle comes every 30 minutes. So if you do not time it correctly,
oh god,
yeah, exactly. So it's like, interesting. And so even if biking, it would actually legitimately, in her case, it's also a downhill on the way. It would take maybe 20 minutes, but it would be 20 minutes from door to door every time.
Yeah.
And then maybe it's 30 minutes on the way back because obviously Hamilton is quite hilly, or mountainous almost. And yeah, that's where an e-bike comes in yet again.
Flattens the hills.
But
like
yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. So she gets the bad experience of having to drive in the first place, and then the experience of bad transit on top of it, just like double up.
Just a 1-2 punch.
Oh my god. Yeah, definitely bike would be much better. as long as you have secure parking or at least some really beefy locks for some security for sure.
Or maybe more parking, you know?
I do have one more
Just
thing
more
to bring
parking.
up.
Yes.
I was at yeah, more parking. That'll solve everything. But it is interesting because I was there 2 months ago, and I'm walking, and I see bike lockers, and I'm like, wait a second. I know what they look like because I have a few videos on them. Because in London, Ontario, actually, I think Nick, you might have been the one, a person to comment on my channel. You're like, wait, London has bike lockers? I don't know.
Yeah,
If
that was the first time
else,
I saw your video. I was like, these exist? I was like, I've never seen these. Yeah.
because they look like freaking transformer boxes or something. Not transformers, but like electrical boxes. It's like, what? And so that bothers me that they don't, like, they're not identifiable to a commoner who rides a bike. They're like, oh yeah, I have to use this bike locker, or sorry,
Were they not labeled
lock
or
my bike
anything?
up to a pole. It's pretty
They were just,
atrocious
like,
labeling,
blank?
to be honest.
Because
Yeah,
normally
they're like
I
gray
see those and they
boxes.
just have like a giant bike decal on them.
They should. Yeah. Not these ones.
While we go talk about
Incredible.
other things, this computer's a little bit laggy. I'm gonna go find a picture for you, and I'll screen share at
Okay.
some point.
Awesome.
Sounds lovely.
All right. Well,
I think we should move on to our next topic.
Yeah, let's segue into the
Um,
next topic here. And this is from California. So, Scott Wiener has introduced a bill. So, what if your car, this is the title of this article here, what if your car wouldn't let you break the law? So, California State Senator Scott Wiener has introduced a bill to physically limit how fast motorists can drive on public roads. And as you can imagine, this has caused a shitstorm, not only from people who are, quote unquote, right wing car enthusiasts, but everybody, including urbanists who might otherwise be interested in these types of things. So, on that face, what do you guys think about this? Having something installed in your car that doesn't let you go faster than 15 miles per hour over the speed limit based on where you're driving.
So I think one of the funniest responses I saw to this it's probably the most American response you could ever make to this. And it was basically saying, what if I needed to get to the hospital fast? See, you guys are smiling and laughing because you're like, I would just call an ambulance. But this kind of brings down to a deeper root.
God.
Where Americans cannot afford to take an ambulance because you'll get a $3,000 medical bill from calling one.
Yeah. And also,
and it's just like, the real problem just went over your head.
And this is something that comes up too so I used to be a paramedic. I've come from that world, and a lot of, jurisdictions, ambulance drivers aren't allowed to speed. They're not allowed to speed. They're allowed to use their sirens, get traffic out of the way, but they're not allowed to break the speed limit, or at least, to a reasonable level. So that's another thing that you can think about. Like, that's creating an unsafe situation for someone having an emergency. My wife is in medical care, and there's a doctor that she worked with who would speed from the North Shore of Vancouver to Vancouver. He got caught going 150 over the Lionsgate Bridge because he had to get to an emergency. It's like you're creating more danger for something else that you need to get to. I don't know. That doesn't quite equate. Like, I don't know what the levels of cost benefit analysis is there, but yeah, I don't think that's a legitimate reason to not have these.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times, a lot of people they hear the line and they immediately want to get angry about it.
Yeah.
Without actually thinking about it just a little bit below the surface. Mm-hmm. And they just see it and they're like, oh, my rights, my free, because whenever you see an article like this, you will see the dumbest American opinions come out about it. I gotta be honest about my people. They will come out with the dumbest shit on this planet whenever it comes to anything that, might have some sort of benefit, but restricts, your freedom in the slightest amount but it's not even really restricting your freedom because you're technically not allowed to go over the speed limit anyways. It's just, it's such a ridiculous, like, it channels out like the dumbest American thought on this. And it's like, it makes my brain hurt because it's like, you don't need to be, it's not even like it's restricting like by GPS location yet. They just want a normal one that just like restricts at like the highest speed that you can legally go on any highway in the US, which is 85 miles an hour, or I think like, what is that, like 120 kilometers an hour, something like that?
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
Maybe a little bit faster, but yeah, it's not like it's this crazy, it's not like it's restricting you to 25 miles an hour everywhere. It's 85 for every road.
Yeah. Ben, you look like you're
I'm
ready to
just
jump in.
laughing this whole time. Oh yeah, it's so funny. You're I can't break the it's endless. I agree with those articles, and I agree with like all the people who jump in, and I have so many videos that I've saved that I want to comment and like react. No, it's not like a react channel, but straight up, it's endless. You go on Reddit, you go on like the articles, news articles, you go on anything, and people are just up in arms. But I think what it is that so e-bikes are regulated. All of the electric things are regulated, maybe not EUCs just yet, which are, for those who don't know, are pretty cool devices that are totally a gray area right now, electric unicycles, but very efficient. I'm totally going to get into those at some point just for fun.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
I will hurt myself if I ride one.
Oh, I think we will too. We said like, oh yeah, we will, but we're also going to injure ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
So, but no, it's just so everything that gets introduced now, if vehicles were, so personal vehicles, a car, let's say a truck, if those were invented right now, they would be regulated. And it's because once you have the freedom and people are so used to it, once you start restricting that freedom, they get it up in arms, obviously. And it's just funny. And the reason I was chuckling. Exactly. And the reason I was chuckling is because it's a speed limit. You can't, I can't break the speed limit. Are you kidding me? It's like, wait, you're 15 miles an hour over the speed limit? No. And also, Nick, I didn't realize you were in the paramedic side of things, but it's about average speed, right? I mean, it's not about top speed. Like, that's what traffic introduces, is a lower average speed. You don't need to gun it. I also drive, and I drive the speed limit, and I barely have to brake, but people are flooring it past me on these 4-lane stroads, and they just brake hard at the red lights, and I just chill.
So
I get there.
Crazy thing for the audience to hear: if you're going the speed limit, or even going slower, if everybody was going slower, that would technically increase the efficiency of cars.
Yep.
Yeah, it's something I've brought up many times when I think there's one thing I'm actually talking about this next video I'm making about Vancouver, and what sucks about cycling here is the fantastic grade separated bike lanes that are downtown, yet the lights are timed for a green wave for cars at 50 kilometers per hour. And it's like, well, we could, get two birds with one stone here. We can improve the flow, make it safer for cars, and let cyclists also get that green wave. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think it's a punishment towards drivers. And I think this is the same thing. But there was one tweet, I think, just in this article here from Urban Proxima, and I think they have a point here. It's a hot take, not a fan, just design streets to limit the speed of a vehicle, not a big brother device. And I'm kind of the position, yes, but like, and we can do both things at the same time. Because you
can still get to... this is a physics thing too. Like, we have to understand that. And we also have to understand that people are going to drive impaired whether you design the street to be traffic calmed or not. Unfortunately, that's just going to happen. People are going to make stupid mistakes. And if you want to do any sort of harm reduction on this, having some sort of speed governor, whether its highest speed is 85 miles an hour, like that we were just discussing that, Scott Wiener had proposed, if you make it 85 miles an hour, it's 100. You are going to have significantly less kinetic energy than if you were going like 130, 140 miles an hour. And reducing the amount of energy that is being produced, even if it's not, like a crazy amount, like if your max speed is 85, then, still, that's going to reduce the amount of damage that is caused by an irresponsible driver, even if you design your streets to be traffic calmed.
Yeah. And I think there's even things you can do with this and implementing them in a way that could help traffic safety while not doing it across the board, not making it a blanket thing. And that's like, what about just city vehicles? If it's a city vehicle, like somebody, working in the city of Vancouver, somebody who uses a vehicle for the job, why can't you make those speed limited? Stuff like that. Because as soon as you have somebody on the road who can't go over, 10 kilometers, 10 miles per hour over the speed limit, it's already creating impedance and slowing down traffic. That's just an idea. But then again, that could introduce other problems with speed differentials. But anyway, that's my thoughts on it. And whether or not this should be implemented, I think it's good that it's being proposed as just an idea right now, because it's definitely going to be a thing in the future.
Absolutely. And eventually we'll be able to get, better with the GPS tracking for it as well, too.
Mhm.
And then we can actually, limit people safely to, restricted speeds that the road is limited to.
Mhm.
I mean, granted, we'll have to fix speed limits as well, too, because that's a broken system. But, we'll be able to actually restrict speeds on vehicles to actually go the speed limit on
Yeah.
roads.
I think people misunderstand the freedoms that they have in a vehicle, which are pretty open. Because like you're on public roads, you shouldn't be able to speed. I think one of the arguments that I hear for those speed inhibitors or like the limiters is, well, I need to pass someone and it could be dangerous if I can't floor it and go really fast very suddenly. I kind of agree, sure, but I'm never in that situation. But sure, debatably, that is something. But within city limits, especially, that should never happen. You should never be flooring it past someone. That's never in my life happened. Yeah,
But Ben,
it's just
I
very-
live in a city of 500 people. Everyone drives. We all go 500 over the speed limit. Little Timmy died last week, but it's okay because I have my
That was his fault, by the
350
way.
Super Duty. Yeah, it was his fault. He was one of them damn cyclists.
Yeah, he wasn't looking.
And he didn't have any high vis.
Exactly.
How am I
I'm
supposed to
glad
see
we're on
him
the same wavelengths here.
while I'm texting and driving? No,
And
using my Apple
all
Vision
of the
Pro while
things.
I'm driving.
Can't believe it happened immediately. Like it didn't wait.
That's going to happen.
Oh, it has.
Oh, it already did. It happened day one.
Oh, are you kidding me? I'm not even. Never mind. Why
I
am
wish I was
surprised?
joking.
Yeah.
I saw someone behind the wheel. Oh, sorry. It's
There you go. The visual's great. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you got to check it out. This is
Yeah, YouTube is like the place
All
to
right,
watch this
we all
because
got
then
the
you can
Jordy,
see my...
Jordy LaForge from Star Trek. That's great. Okay, we got to get moving here.
We're gonna run into the listener mail.
Yeah, running out of time. So if you want to message us, you could comment on our YouTube channel or send us a message at radiofreeurbanism@gmail.com. And we have this one from last week from Ted from Montreal. It's a long email. I've cut it down as best as I could, but I keep the essence of it. So here we go. Hi, guys. I really enjoy listening to you guys on my bus ride to work. I live in Montreal, generally considered an urbanist oasis in North America. It still has a long way to go to be able to measure up to some great cities around the world. One hurdle that Montreal faces is that it is made up of many different municipalities, which can delay or even halt projects altogether. One such project is the Royal Mount development in the town of Mount Royal. And the $7 billion project is set to create a walkable, cyclable, transit-oriented mixed-use development connected to nearby metro stations across a major highway through underground and above-ground passages. However, it faces several key areas of opposition. Number one is opposition from drivers, as it's located near an intersection of Canada's busiest highways. And this is already a source of major congestion. And the argument is that this development would only make the horrible traffic even worse because despite the easy access to metro, I might have messed that up. Anyway, number two is opposition from urbanist communities because it doesn't have rent-controlled and affordable social housing. It's supposed to be luxury housing. And number three is opposition from the city of TMR, and that's one we mentioned earlier. And the mayor of TMR was recently elected in 2021, specifically on a no residential development at Royal Mount platform. The developer has even revised the original plans of 6,000 homes down to 4,500, and then again down to 3,000, but the city still won't budge. And it seems TMR just wants their own massive car-centric shopping mall surrounded by parking lots, of which, by the way, there is no shortage in the Montreal area already. And the most frustrating part to me is that despite being a resident of the city of Montreal, the way the municipalities are divided, I, along with others who would benefit, do not get to vote on the matter. I would love to get your guys' input on the matter. Ted in Montreal. So I tried to read that as fast as possible. Hope it went okay. So if you got the idea. So first and foremost, the thing I want to address is the whole thing about the divided municipalities. And that is a double-edged sword. So this can go two different ways. So my example is going to come from Toronto. So I lived in Toronto around 2012 to 2014. And during that time, there was an election. And I remember voting for a certain person. You might know them now. Their name is Olivia Chow, who is now the mayor of Toronto. And I voted for them. And I remember reading all the platforms and reading her platform. This would be great for the city. I was living in Toronto. This is fucking amazing. Yes, we want this woman in charge of our city. But she didn't get elected. John Tory got elected and he became the mayor and stayed the mayor until just this last year when he had a scandal and Olivia Chow now got elected in. Anyway, the big reason why he got elected is the fact that as opposed to Montreal and their separated communities, Toronto was amalgamated in the opposite direction back in, I think it was 98. So you actually get this effect where these other communities that don't have your interests in mind are now voting on the things in your city and affecting the way that you're going to be living your life. So it is a double-edged sword, right? Because, hey, maybe Montreal would be amalgamated and it would go in the direction you'd want. On the other hand, what could have happened is that it get amalgamated and the Montreal you know today wouldn't be there because these other communities would be voting against the interests that you want and you have gotten in Montreal. That's just my 2 cents on the matter. Yeah. What do you guys think about this? So from the opposition from drivers and oppositions from urbanist communities as far as housing goes.
Yeah. So when it comes to it, I mean, I have the American, political system, so it's a little bit different than, the Canadian one. But the way this is probably going to be the wildest comparison, but I have to say one of the interesting ways that this is probably weirdly connected is that Montreal has that kind of broken up, city government style that the Los Angeles area metro has. But I think that the real thing is that you have to kind of, at least when it comes to transit development, kind of separate and have sort of regional planning that kind of incorporates all communities in the greater metro area, but have, equalized representation, not purely of everybody having the same vote, but having, the larger communities having more vote than the smaller communities. Because let's be fair here, your major metro area, the actual city itself, needs to have more representation in what's going on in the greater metro area's transit than, say, some small suburb that's mainly made up of wealthy people who mostly drive everywhere. But that's just my 2 cents on it when it comes to planning for, cities.
Mm-hmm. Ben, do you have anything to say?
I find it interesting because as you were reading that email, I was thinking and pondering, and I'm very confident talking about cycling and independent movement. And then it comes to something like this, where it is involving housing and the specific limits. And it's just, I can't even recall everything because it's so multifaceted that, yeah, no wonder
it breaks
all of
the
this
brain.
is so difficult because there's so, yeah, I'm like, oh, good, I didn't take my notes. Dang it. Okay, well, I'm out of luck now. No, really, it is multifaceted in every single city, and then as you guys were saying, it's different in every location geographically, like all across the planet. So the it's all hyper local, really. I don't have anything to add to that. I mean, I've been to Montreal, lived there for. Okay, fine. I will add something. I've been over there a few different times. We chose to work remotely there for 5 weeks at one point, 2 months for another point, and we've considered moving there. Language barrier, slightly a problem. My family, part of my family lives in Quebec, and so we're aware of the benefits. It's super, super tough. And then the highway going through things, that's a whole other issue. No, I don't have anything to add. I just there's so many, my brain's just
gotta let it marinate, and think about it.
Yeah. The next time you're on the podcast, you'll have a response.
I'll comment on this video later with. Yeah.
No, things are very hyper local, and some cities definitely do have some good comparisons. I mean, yeah, it really all depends on how your, municipality is organized. If it's more, very chunked up, or if it's, all one greater metro area like Toronto is.
Yeah. I'm going to have a few more points and then we're going to move on just in the interest of time. And I think Alex will definitely have some words on this next week. But as far as the opposition from urbanists,
I have to say, I don't know what that face was. That's just horrible. Wait, one more second. Show up to the meetings, even if you can't vote. Get at the meetings that are. This is probably the best action item. If you cannot vote, go to the meetings, gather the info, densify it, get people who can vote, like talk to them. You can persuade people. You can get other people. If it's going to affect your life and other people that you know, and it's just because you live on this side of the street and not that side of the street that you can't vote, talk to the people on the other side of the street. Like, go walk.
Yeah. So yeah, go
That's
out.
The best thing you can do.
Your homework for this episode, viewers, is to go and touch grass and talk to people, because you never know. You might actually convince somebody.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, totally. So as far as the opposition from urbanist communities, they're talking about these being luxury units. While I think it's a great idea when you're building anything to have actual affordable units within the project, that's a great idea. But just from the point of saying, hey, it's just luxury, those are units on the market now that weren't there before. And that's going to displace people from somewhere else. They're going to move from whatever other high rise they might be living in already and leaving space. The old stuff keeps getting older, right? It's not like they're taking away already living space and replacing with high rises. There's nothing there. From what I read, nothing is there. And this is replacing that. And it's more on the market. And that's a good thing. As far as drivers, come on. Like, the thing about driving and traffic, it's about it's behavioral psychology, right? And if this is well connected by metro, that can change the way other people are already moving. And that's not including the people who are going to be moving into this development. And again, that's something that's going to break my brain when I start to try to think about traffic. I'm not cut out to figure that out. We need a traffic expert to figure out whether or not that's going to break the whole system.
We'll call one in.
Yeah. People change their traffic patterns and the way they move around based on what it actually is on that microscopic level. It's granular. If the traffic gets worse for somebody, they might finally realize, hey, this 5-kilometer trip, I could take on an e-bike.
Hey, so wait a minute. The train is faster.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Wow. A lot of people think of it as a static thing, but it's not. It's not. It keeps changing.
If you think about everything in terms of traffic, then you're only thinking about things in terms of cars.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it. That's all you're doing.
Yeah. All right.
Unless you're thinking about bike traffic, but we got to move on.
Yeah. We got one from Andrew from Silver Spring. We're going to keep that for next week because I think it's directed at Alex and his record keeping. So I'm going to let Alex take care of that one next week. But we do have one from one of our favorite listeners, Hall's Emporium. Thank you so much. She always got the greatest little questions.
Friend of the show, Hall's Emporium. We'll have to get her on as a guest one week eventually.
Yeah. So I'm going to read this, and we're going to start with Ethan and then Ben, and then I can answer it. So when you are on longer transit journeys, what do you most often occupy with your time? Examples: music, book, podcast, game, etc.
Wow, this is a really good question. It really depends. So if we're talking like a quick transit trip around the city, usually I'll just stick to my phone. But if we're talking like, say, like Amtrak, long distance or something like that, it really varies. Like I'll read, I'll check my phone occasionally. I'll go to the dining or the lounge and go hang out with other people and, talk. But I'll also, if I'm feeling like ignoring everybody, I'll just sit in my seat, look out the window, pop on some music, and that's how I'll enjoy my transit trip or my train trip or whatever. Great way. Enjoy the views.
And Ben, how about yourself?
My favorite thing about transit is the thing you cannot do when driving: closing your eyes. So like that just gives me immense amounts of just happiness and joy. So yes, headphones gives me the option of, yes, I can either be social if I hear something happening, kind of do just put my headphones to the side, eavesdrop a little bit, not quite, but sometimes I end up chatting with people. But you can also just not even like a meditative state, I guess, but like just chill and like close your eyes and just, you can kind of tell what the bus is doing. And like, that is my favorite thing to do. And yes, to music or podcasts. But sometimes just silence. Like, that's not what you get. Okay, you get silence if you want to in a car, but you can't not think when you're in a car.
Yeah, so you're paying attention. Yeah. You're occupied.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Myself,
actually, even with biking,
Nick?
you have to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, that's the thing about.
What's your favorite thing?
Thank you. Well, it depends. Again, it depends on the journey. Short journeys, it's podcasts usually or music. Audiobooks I love too, but any longer journey, it's either a movie, which usually only if I'm sharing with somebody, like if I'm with my wife and we can watch a movie together, I like that. But I'm definitely the gamer on the long trips. Love gaming. I'll usually bring an Xbox controller, and then on my phone, I'll set up an emulator and play some retro games. Usually, like I actually. So I went back to London last summer, like I said earlier. I actually became a Pokemon master for the first time in like 10 years, which was awesome. Just like relive my childhood playing Pokemon. It was so much fun. It was awesome. Yeah, gaming is definitely my time occupier when traveling. Yeah, absolutely. But back to what you said, Ben, about when you're cycling and it takes up your attention. This is something I'm realizing is going to be a much longer conversation than I want it to be. So I'm just going to say, yes, that's absolutely true. And it's one thing I don't do when I'm cycling or riding my scooter or whatever is listen to anything. I'm just paying attention fully, which I think is a good thing. It's not what a lot of people do. You see guys with like giant headphones on their scooters or whatever. You're just like, okay, this is dangerous.
At best, careful. If you're going to do that, you need to have a speaker, like an open speaker. So that way you're not, you don't have headphones on.
Yes. As loud as you can, just like crank it. Yeah.
Phone in holder. Yeah. Pure phone audio.
All right. And the last thing we want to talk about, there we go. The last thing we want to talk about here is a Wugmug. What grinds my gears? And it's something I need to talk about. And it was on my back burner list. And the reason why I'm bringing it up today is because we have Ben here to talk about it too, because I know it's something that he has definitely experienced when it comes to online conversations about this thing. He's got plenty of videos about it. And that's about cycling in the winter. I'm sick and tired of people telling me, oh, you can't use a bike in the winter. You can't do that because it's cold. And then, there's snow on the ground and you might fall over. Like it really grinds my gears. It really is annoying. So we had a snowfall here in Vancouver a few weeks ago, like we do every year, a big dump. The city shuts down. And I always see the same things. I had a comment at one of my videos about this when I posted a short about the city clearing the snow on the bike paths. And somebody commented like, oh, how was biking yesterday? Like, and I'm like, did you look at Twitter? Did you see all the cars crashing? What do you mean? Like all transportation was fucked yesterday. Like it's about taking care of the infrastructure. You take care of the infrastructure, you can use it. You take care of yourself, put on some gloves, get some pogies on your handlebars. It's totally fine. You can get to where you're going.
I would totally argue bikes are actually probably the better option when it comes to traveling in the wintertime. And this is obviously a controversial take, but it is so much easier to put studded tires on a bike than it is a car, and it's so much cheaper. And if you just want to stay warm, which is like the biggest complaint that you'll hear people whine, bitch, and moan about, you just put on gloves, you put on a jacket, you put on a hat, you put on a scarf, and you're fine. Mm-hmm. And at worst, if you really want to get fancy with it, you can get those heated gloves too for the handlebars. Those are really nice, but it's honestly, it's so much better.
Yeah.
So I looked at this question on the spreadsheet that you guys have, and I took a screenshot at 12:51 today, and it's just the Weather Network app. I'll just send that later. Just edit it in there. Yeah, do that. Anyways, and the main bit here is brace for tricky travel as snow returns to Ontario on Thursday, and it shows cars on the highway, etc. And it's exactly what you're talking about. I'm like, okay, I'll just bike. I mean, okay, highway travel is slightly different, but it's -2. And the reason I took it right then and there is because my fiance Natalia was out probably 5 kilometers away. She went over to Staples to do some photo printing, and she biked. I mean, it was -2, and it felt like -6 apparently. That's why I wanted to capture that moment in time, because it's very possible. And it's not just me going out there. She's able to do that. And I love when she's able to do that because she's not a mammal.
Yeah.
She's not. Yeah. Like, it's just the more women and children on bikes in adverse conditions, the better. It's a sign of a healthier city. And so whenever she gets out there, I'm like, yes. You go, you do that. And she's been out multiple times because she's been doing some printing stuff. And so she's been biking more this week than I have, like 50 kilometers later. It's like, but you can't bike in the winter. It's like, what are we doing?
I love the idea in urbanism of using basically the environmental science term of looking at indicator species and seeing the health of an ecosystem, and looking at this but with our cities. Because when you see people who aren't just, mammals riding around, you'll see that cycling is probably a more healthy activity or it's the cycling, infrastructure is probably healthier than your average suburban area. And I think the real indicator species of cycling that isn't just the infrastructure has to be cargo bikes.
Yes.
Like, that is like the absolute ultimate indicator species. If you see one, it's a good area for cycling. If you see multiple, you know that you're really in an area that has some decent cycling infrastructure. You don't have to see any cycling infrastructure. If you see people on cargo bikes, you already know.
Yeah. Every time I see somebody on a cargo bike or like one of those not the Rad Rover, I can't remember, the Rad Wagon with the kid on the back.
Rad Wagon.
I want to like yell at them like, yeah, but I don't want to be that weird guy. Like, why is this fucking guy yelling at me? But yeah.
I love your bike.
Yeah. I say that sometimes though. As long as it's a man riding, I don't want to scare some woman off her bike and her child. Be like, oh, fucking get away from this creep. Yeah, it's definitely a good indicator species. I like that. So you call it frostbiking, right, Ben?
So I heard that because of Shifter over in Edmonton.
Yes.
And funny thing, London Bicycle Cafe here in London, who they specialize in gazelles and cargo bikes, and Gazelle is a brand of pretty premium bike. And I'm totally behind what they're doing because they're trying to bring the Dutch style bikes to London. And this is me losing a train of thought halfway through talking. We were just talking about words and things. My words and things did not turn into a sentence. Please send help.
I always find it weird how the Dutch style bike kind of looks like the beach bike. I'm like, they're so similar. I'm like, they're the same thing, except one is just like Dutch bike, beloved, beach bike, meh. I don't know. I'm sure there's probably something with the beach bike that is like, or like the Dutch bike that's like infinitely better, but I'm just like, the beach bike is kind of up there. It's a good one. It's also another indicator species of a beach town having good bike infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah.
True.
So Ben, did you find your thought? If not, I have one more question for you at the end of the show.
There was a point there. There was the thought that got in my way. I'll just go on another thought real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
So my sister and brother-in-law, they were going to go and get an electric car. They were talking on a camping trip, like I remember 3 years ago. And I was like, I mean, do you guys really need that? Like, I think bikes would be better. And they're very active. They're totally open-minded. And they are over in Ottawa, Ontario, in Canada. And like, how do I specify that? Because normally I say London, Ontario, Canada, because London's not. Anyways, everyone knows where Ottawa is, I hope. And they bike to work year-round. One, not so much because it's super far. But they have a rad wagon. This is why I was thinking of this. And their kid goes on the back. And so, boom. And they opened up a cycling bridge near them, near the Parliament. And it's very well used. So
that's awesome. I love it.
Nice.
So on the topic of winter cycling.
I could know my other thought, but
it's okay. We'll send
You're
it
gonna get
after.
it as soon as the show ends.
Yeah, exactly. As far as winter cycling, what is your process of gearing up, and what do you ride to make sure you're safe and comfortable riding in the winter?
So it's interesting because everything you guys said about wearing things like a scarf and a hat, and the only difference, like when I go out to go for a walk or drive or go outside during the winter, I'm wearing like the same thing. It's having a shell is key, and covering up like the balaclava is the biggest thing, along with, yes, making sure that your hands and feet are warm. My feet, I don't really do anything different. Depending on my end destination and how long the trip is, and whether or not it's like -30, which this year won't happen. So like you could bike the entire year with just normal clothing. But yeah, balaclava. And I do one day, I have a video coming out in the next bit, and I just actually wore goggles. I kind of want to get ski goggles, but these are just safety goggles I got at Mark's Work Warehouse like 5 years ago, and they worked really well. But normally I just use like safety glasses that I got on Ali, whatever, Express, Baba, whatever the thing is, for like $2, and I got like 10 of them. And so I just, I have those and I put those on, and it's really the face, because we were grocery shopping yesterday, and it got a little bit chilly, and I was like, okay, I forgot something at the grocery store and had to go out again, which is actually kind of pleasurable, because I'm like, oh yeah, like I don't have to start the car. Like I just straight up, we went to the store, we forgot something, I guess I'm gonna go biking right back, and it's just so much fun knowing that I don't have to get in the car.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'll go get something. So yeah, balaclava and mitts and feet stuff. Okay, this is a pro tip. When you buy boots, especially winter boots, don't get too small of boots. They're winter boots. You're not going to be like running laps around somewhere. Get them a size extra or something, or too large, because you can put extra insulation in, and the insulation comes from having some air in there. You don't want your foot to be in contact with the sides at all times, because that's just gonna soak the heat out of your foot. Yeah,
a bit loose fitting. So as far as the bike, do you have studded tires? Is that something you have for like the whole season, or do you change them semi-regularly?
So we change twice per year. So just like car tires, you can just go either winters or summers. And it's really annoying because when you don't have a lot of snow, it's just, and because of that, and because it's annoying to change tires anyways, we just have one front studded tire on each of our bikes. And I mean, studded tires aren't the most expensive things. They are expensive, but they last forever. So it's kind of negligible, really. It's really just about the difficulty. I'm like, I don't want to change tires that often, so I just won't. I'll just do the front.
I totally get that.
Alex was on like last week or 2 weeks ago, and he was like, "Oh man, it's not that hard to change a tire on a bike," and I'm just like, "But the pain in the ass that it is to change it."
It's more than nothing, right?
Yeah,
it's more than nothing. Yeah. All right. That's excellent. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise on frostbiking. And if you want to see any videos about that, check out Ben on his channel, Ben Durham. So
we'll link it down below too.
Yes, that absolutely be linked to the show notes as well. So
do the front studded tire.
Not the back one.
I'm like just botching your thing. Yes, check out the channel. But no, the front studded tire is key.
No, I'm supposed to ask. Does anybody have any final thoughts?
That's fair.
Yes, there was a final thought.
If you lose traction on the front.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yep. There was some lag. Sorry. If you lose the traction on the front wheel, you are going down and you'll hurt yourself. And debatably, it's like you could be out of work. Like you don't want to hurt yourself that way. The back tire, if you do a little speed, not even speed wobble, but you do a little fishtail, not the end of the world. I mean, you could put two studded tires on, but if you're going to choose one, do the front. Okay, that was my final thought.
All right,
it's fun to drift. Yeah. It's fun to drift.
Awesome. Okay, thank you for the expertise. Anyways, we're going to end the show here. So, Ben, if you want to just tell everybody your socials and where they can find you, let us know right now.
For sure. So check out YouTube, Ben Durham, and then I'm on Instagram as well, and TikTok, and all of the things pretty much, but all different handles. So if you wanted to find out more, I still need to redo my site, but I'll do it. Oh no, here goes. Bendurham.ca. You can find all of the different socials, but primarily I say that because it's a jank website right now. But yeah, YouTube. Ben Durham.
Wicked. All right, Ethan, where can everybody find you?
You can always find me at Climate and Transit on pretty much every other social except for Twitter, which I am just Climate Transit. Couldn't get the long handle, but you folks know where to find me at this point.
Yeah, I'd hope so. Yeah, and you can find Alex at Humane Cities in most places, and you can find me and Nick Laporte on YouTube or Nick the Door on other socials. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Ben, for joining us. I really appreciate you joining us to be our first guest on Radio Free Urbanism. It's been a pleasure. Well, so everybody, have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time.
Oh, also, car bad, train good. Had to get that in there. That's the line to end the show.